Hi, Stuart Holman with you again as we continue our series in the Psalms. Now, one of the features of the more traditional churches, those with their roots in the life of the monasteries and religious communities of the first millennium, is the daily singing of the Psalms. So each day, often at prescribed hours, the community would gather for prayer, and day by day they would actually sing their way through the entire book of Psalms. Now, this tradition could probably be traced back to the religious life of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, the second temple rebuilt after the exile. And so if you were part of such a worshipping community, that means that you would hear the whole book of Psalms sung from beginning to end over time, day by day by day. And when all 150 Psalms had been sung, then you'd go back to the beginning and you'd start again. In this liturgical setting, in a lectionary cycle of seasons and prescribed readings, the Psalms gave voice to the prayers of the people of Israel and actually formed their hopes and expectations for their Messiah. This kind of setting is easy to see in Psalm 61, where we're turning today. The superscription of the psalm is "For the director of music, with stringed instruments of David." And so the temple setting is indicated by this dedication to the director of music. The psalm has its source with David, presumably in some wilderness situation early on as he battled with Saul. But now that has been adopted into the worshipping, praying and singing life of the temple, and even the second temple after the exile. And so this is a psalm for singing regularly because it forms the singer or the prayer. We are spiritually formed and matured by the regular reading of the whole book of Psalms, not just the ones that we like or the ones that feel good. It's the whole book that is said or sung. And this Psalm 61 begins with an urgent prayer. "Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call to you. I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." So David's prayer for help, before it was recast for use in the temple, comes from the ends of the earth, far from Jerusalem, far from the temple where God's presence was known. And so often our prayers come far from the safe places where God is recognised and revered. When God seems far away, this is a call for help that we can use. The psalm would be learned and sung regularly at the temple, but it actually finds its poignancy at the far ends of the earth. In the life of any Christian, our desperate prayers for help come from these kind of places. It's when our hearts are growing faint and when our faith is challenged and the doubts arise. That's when we call on God. Hear us, God. Protect us, Lord. Comfort us. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Higher than the person praying or singing this psalm. That's an acknowledgement that we're actually, in our situation, our circumstance, we're not able to save ourselves, our resources, our protection, our intellect, even our faith is insufficient. We need a rock, an elevated place of security, especially in the wilderness areas of Israel and the deserts. An elevated place of security that is higher than anything we could do for ourselves. You see, it's not about the strength of our faith, but about the strength of the rock in which our faith is placed. This metaphorical rock can only be God himself. He alone has sufficient strength to save. And so with this prayer, there is actually an assurance. God has delivered his people in the past, and so surely he will do so again. So verse 3, "For you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the foe. I long to dwell in your tent forever and take refuge in the shelter of your wings. For you, God, have heard my vows. You've given me the heritage of those who fear your name. So as this psalm is sung or prayed, the reflection turns to the fact that God has protected Israel in the past through all kinds of situations, which gives the singers of the psalm assurance for the future. The defensive tower, providing elevation above the approaching enemy, was a position of strength. Okay, so from high atop the tower, the archers could shoot further. Rocks or even boiling oil could be rained down upon any attackers who came too close. So the high tower was a strong defence, a protective structure. Like a tower, this prayer for protection is buttressed by God's great faithfulness to his own covenant promises he's made to his people. Now, in what initially seems to be a bit of a change of tack for this psalm, it now pivots to be about a prayer for the king. So going on to verse 6, increase the days of the king's life, his years for many generations. May he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. Then I will ever sing in the praise of your name and fulfill my vows day after day. So it seems that the psalm now turns to be a prayer for the king and for his dynasty. May his life go on and on and on for generations, seated before the living God. It's a pretty grand request, actually, isn't it? A big ask in prayer. And in fact, it's on such a scale, with such a vast horizon, that actually this is a prayer that cannot be fulfilled in the experience of a merely human king, like all of the other kings of Israel, from David and Solomon and Rehoboam and so forth, all the long list. No, we actually recognise this prayer, although it has its source in David, it actually has its fulfilment in God's messianic king, King David's greatest son, the one promised back in 2 Samuel chapter 7. This is a prayer for the one who fulfills all of the hopes formed by the book of Psalms. And so when we actually make this identification, now we know which king it is, particularly the Messiah king for whom we are praying. Now this final group of 3 verses actually connect this prayer to the protection with which the psalm began. This is a prayer that would bring protection to those who trust themselves to God's Messiah. So verse 6 isn't actually a sudden departure or change of topic. It turns out that our protection and our safety is entirely bound up in the rule of God's chosen Messiah King, who will reign forever in God's presence. That's where true security is found. He is the rock that is higher than anything we could put together. He is the high tower of defence. When we entrust ourselves to him, we find that we do have a secure home, dwelling in God's tabernacle tent, as it says there, verse 4, forever. And so today, as you sit reflecting with me upon this psalm, Psalm 61, I wonder if you find yourself out of your depth. Is there a situation in your life that's beyond your control, a situation you've been trying to manage or manipulate, worrying about it, anxious? Well, this is a psalm that prompts us to turn away from our own defences, our own strategies and our protective behaviours, and instead put all our trust in Jesus Christ, God's Messiah King, in that specific situation which you have in mind. This is not a call to live recklessly, not be wise in all you do, but recognise that actually your protection, your security ultimately does come from God through whatever means he provides, human or otherwise. And if today there is no singular situation making us anxious or concerned, can I challenge us all with the thought that God's protective care is not limited to the changing situations and circumstances of our life that come and go. No, each of us desperately needs a rock that is higher than I, upon whom we can stand forever. Our lives in every part are fragile and temporary without the saving work of God's Messiah King. Jesus Christ alone will save us from our own failings, our own weaknesses, such that we are given a heritage, the inheritance of those who belong to God, as it says in verse 5. And so with the psalmist, we can at the last sing God's praise. May he, the Messiah, be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. Then I'll sing in praise of your name and fulfill my vows day after day.